Welcome to Naked Faith, where we take off the masks, drop the performances, and get honest about what it really means to follow Jesus. I'm Ron, and these are my amazing co-hosts, Grace and Michelle. Together, we're creating a space for real conversations, real stories, and real encounters with a love that never gives up. No agendas, no religious hypes, just real people sharing how they met in the messy middle and pointing to one truth. Jesus still transforms lives. So whether you're walking strong or hanging on by a thread, you're welcome here. This is Naked Faith. Let's get into it. All right. Well, so we have decided that we're going to move in a little bit of a different direction with our topics. And this is mostly driven by me. I will let everybody know that. Is really kind of diving into the Gnostic religion and the Gnostic concepts of what they believe. And a lot of it has to do because it really kind of resonates with me. So I don't know where we're going to go, but we're going to start with this discussion. And then I would like to also say next week, we actually will have a little bit of a break because we have a guest. And I'm actually excited about this guest because he sought us out, which is really kind of cool, which means that there is people we weren't thinking actually listening to us. So that's really cool and exciting when he told us that he listened to us and then decided to reach out and say he wanted to be on our podcast. So we'll introduce him a little later. And then obviously next week when he comes on. So we're really excited about that because he's a really cool guy. So we'll get into that. But all right. So we're going to start with Gnosticism. But before we get into like a really deep discussion, I want to ask you guys a thought-provoking question. So the question is, have you ever had a moment in life where your traditional belief failed you, but a gut instinct or direct experience saved you?
And then, like, that does that have to pertain to religion or just in general?
No, anything in life.
Right.
Like, have you ever just, like you learn something, I don't know, even in school, and you're like, oh, that's the way it is. But then you were faced with a situation and you're like, that doesn't seem right. But your gut told you to go do something different. Or your instincts told you to do something different than what your traditional knowledge knew.
I'm either drawing a complete blank or there's too many things happening in my brain at once that I can't pinpoint something.
It's funny you say that because I have been thinking about this question for a couple of days and I'm in the same boat. I was like, oh, I know there's lots of instances in my life where I've like my book knowledge failed me and my instinct, but I was like, I can't think of anything, but I did think of something. And this was more a gut, right? And I would actually say starting this podcast was, I wouldn't say that I had a lot of knowledge on how to start a podcast, but all logic told me this was a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But my gut said, this is something I want to do and I want to try it. And, when I first thought of this, I never thought it would turn out the way it did. And I'm glad I followed my gut because, again, if we only ever have 10 listeners, my hour a week that I spend with you two is probably one of the best hours of my week.
No, he's getting sappy.
Well, I mean, it's true. It's true, right? So,
yeah.
So anything? You guys got anything?
I can't think
like,
of anything,
I don't know,
like, directly.
I will say for me, like, I feel like for so much of my educational life growing up, like, I was always by the book, teacher's pet kind of thing, just wanted to like do a good job, get good grades and things like that. And then so that kind of just trained me to definitely be more head focused sometimes of like that kind of thing. And the best thing I can think of right now is like getting a degree in musical theater and like learning more acting in general and trying to be more present in general and just like go with the flow instead of like controlling what I might do with my mind, you know. In that kind of sense, that's definitely more artistic. But yeah, again, I feel like there's a lot of other instances, like I guess a part of me doesn't want to like say it because it can have like a uh it involves like marijuana, and I know that a lot of people in society, look down upon it a lot, and I do get that in some degree. But then it also seems like
But it's who you are.
there's so many like, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, don't be ashamed of, like, listen,
Be your authentic self.
I got 5 more years and then I'm hitting it up.
Because I'm not one to, I mean, I have in the past, but I'm not one to like use it every single day. I don't think that's personally healthy for me, but there's definitely things I feel like can be discovered in using it sometimes. And so that kind of feels like growing up in a society where like everyone says it's so bad and like you can't do that, it's not healthy. And like I do get that to a certain degree, but then you kind of discover when you follow your own heart and stuff, like there's things that can lead you elsewhere.
Yeah.
That was kind of the main thing that was coming to mind, honestly. So I was like, I feel like I have to share this. So
No, that was good.
yeah.
Just so you know, the only reason why I haven't done it now is because I have a clearance, but when I retire, I told my son.
Oh, you mean?
What? Go ahead.
No, like, what do you mean you have a clearance? I guess I don't understand what that means
Because
for your
I have
job.
a security clearance.
Okay.
And I'm bound by the federal laws, not the state laws.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
So,
yeah.
So, but I told my son, I'm like, hey, when I retire and I don't have to worry about this crap anymore, we're going to go try psychedelics.
Yeah. That's something else. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, what about you, Michelle?
I think I'm going to go on the path of like this whole podcast thing because beforehand, I mean, I remember going to church and you believe exactly what they say. You believe exactly what they tell you to do. You believe every story that they tell you. And ever since starting this podcast, like part of me, it's kind of the same thing. Like my head's like, I don't know if that's right, but my gut's telling me like there's something more that we're not getting at church or getting from these spiritual leaders that we're supposed to follow. And it's made me question a lot of things about my Christianity and about who I am and what we're supposed to believe and what's actually true.
So I ruined you.
I mean, I guess so.
It's
but
it's interesting. It's interesting though. Yeah, sorry, you go.
I was just saying, I think it's a good point to be because I feel like you need to be confident in questioning those things. Like,
absolutely.
I mean, you shouldn't just rely on if somebody tells you to go, somebody that you trust and love tells you to go jump off a bridge because that's the right thing to do, are you going to do it? Oh.
Yeah, good point.
Right. Yeah. It's like how much will it take for you to think for yourself kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I was saying it's interesting because, hundreds of years ago, if anyone were to say what we're saying, like we'd be, charged for like treason and heresy kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like it's wild, and it's crazy to think about how much has been kind of indoctrinated into society because someone decided to like spearhead Christianity in a very specific way.
Yeah.
Back in like the 5th century of like establishing what exactly goes into the Bible and then just like leaving other things out
Right.
for like no real reason other than to further the narrative that they wanted for the patriarchy.
Oh, but it was
But
God
anyways,
inspired. Grace, did you not know that?
says that's
I
a
mean,
bunch of heresy.
They did not pick these on their own. They were guided by the Spirit.
Were they guided by the Spirit when they were doing a lot of other sinful things that I don't want to explicitly say right now?
Look at what I've created out of you two. Oh my gosh, you guys are just like me now.
Well, it makes you also think, like, I'm like really fascinated by like, like the Christian like cults, like the, like really far like right Christians that, like they live by like certain ways and stuff, and they've created like their whole, like their own, I guess, communities, and they have to go by certain laws. It just makes me think, like, how many of those people really believe in what they're being told, and what makes them believe that? Like, what kind of influences are they getting?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I shared on Substack, I wrote an article about this, and it was about like, I called it, when did the awakening happen? And, for me, it was interesting because I was probably 15 years old when the first time I actually ever went to church, and it really meant something. And what started out as something very innocent, like, made me start questioning everything. Right. And so if you read the article, I talk about, I went to church with a friend of mine, and it was a Southern Baptist church in Daytona Beach, Florida. And it was a little, like, it reminds you, like, if you know what Little House on the Prairie was, like, that's what it was. It was like a one-room church. But you think in Daytona in the 80s, like, we would have modern buildings, but this was like a little schoolhouse, right? And so, like, and it had that smell, the old, like, I can remember the smell, the old, like, wooden schoolhouse smell that you smell. You've been in these old buildings, like, that's what it smelled like. And so, anyway, we go to church, and, I'm 15 years old, and I'm just thinking, I want to get out of here and go ride my bike and go get in trouble and do stuff, right? Like, whatever. I was paying attention, but I wasn't like, whatever, right? And I remember we were walking out, and it was back in the time when the pastor stood at the door and he greeted everyone as they left. And, because they were kind of like a community. And when he sees me, obviously I'm new, when there's only like 25 people that go to this church, they recognize somebody new. And so he sees that I'm new, and he stops me and he asks me something to the effect of, what did I think of the sermon? And, I was kind of like, oh, it was okay. Typical teenager, 15-year-old response. Right. And he's like, oh, it's just okay. Like, he asked me this other question, and I said, I just feel like some of the things you said, I didn't interpret what you were saying. Like, when you read these passages, I didn't see it the way you explained it. Like, it came across to me as different. Well, at that moment, there was an older gentleman in the church. He was a widow. And there's importance to that. But now, if you can imagine, for those of you who know me, I'm 6'1", and at the time I was 15, I was actually 6'2". I've shrunk because I'm old. I weighed probably 250 pounds. I was a big kid. And this guy's like 5'2", maybe 110 soaking wet. So he grabs me by the arm and he pushes me out into the, like, away from the pastor, into the outside yard, right? And he very calmly said, listen, son, we don't question the pastor. And I was like, here's me, 15 years old. I wasn't questioning anything. He asked me. So I was just being honest. And so I said, well, what, am I not allowed to disagree with what I thought he said? Like, no, because he speaks for God. And we don't question him because he speaks for God. Oh, okay.
It's like, how are you supposed to learn anything if you don't ask questions?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But this was the mentality. And so,
Right.
you know, this guy was widowed and he had this big piece of property. And so, like, my buddy and I actually would spend Saturdays and Sundays at his house doing odd jobs for him because, you know, just for fun. Because I mean, he couldn't do it. I don't remember what the story was with his children, why they weren't around, or like I don't remember any of that part. Like whether there was a disagreement or that they just lived in other like far away and couldn't come help him. I don't remember, but all I know is usually on a Saturday or Sunday, sometimes Saturday and Sunday, my buddy and I would be over at his house doing stuff around his house, you know, painting and yard work or whatever. I mean, not all day, but it'd be like, you know, 4 or 5 hours a day. We'd go over there and hang out. I mean, he was a good dude. He was really, I mean, he's kind of like your grandfather, you know, and he would feed us lunch. And then, you know, during lunch, we would have a little Bible study. And like, I really got into the mindset of what this generation kind of acted in. But it was that moment that I was like, well, wait a minute. Like exactly what you were saying, Grace. Like I should have the freedom to question. I didn't know it at the time that this happened, that this was my journey of life. But, you know, when I reflect back on at what point in my life did I start saying, this just doesn't seem right? It was probably that moment. So, you know, now I think I'm, you know, going to be 56 here in a few weeks. And I'm like, it's just interesting that, you know, I've spent my whole life like trying to understand, like I've been trying to fill my head with theoretical book knowledge because I want to defend my positions. And what I've learned in my journey over the last, 5 months when we started this, like
It's almost a year.
has it been almost a year? It has, hasn't it?
Wow.
Yeah. End of June.
Wow. We need to get cracking because we should be further along. But
Hey, there's no set timeline, Ron.
I know. I'm just saying. So let me explain like what I understand of Gnosis, and you guys jump in and like don't let me dominate the conversation like I normally do. But so what I feel like Gnosis is, or Gnostics, it's exactly that, right? It's like I've spent the past 30 years of my life trying to understand from a theoretical perspective the dogma of Scripture so that I could defend it, right? So that I could be the one that says, oh, you know, when somebody reads a passage and you're like, well, that's not, you know, like that's not really how that really meant. And when I say that, I spend time, you know, I've said this before, I can't read the Bible because I want to dive into the historical, you know, the context, right? What was happening at the time, because that's all important. It's like if you're going to dive deep into the Bible and understand how does that apply to me today, you have to understand the context of what was going on when these things were written. Because I mean, on its surface, it doesn't, like we can't relate to David fighting a giant, right? And so you have to go back and say, well, what was going on at that time, you know? And yes, there were giants at that time, you know, people that were 7 to 8 feet tall, and you know, when the average height of a human was only 5, and these were anomaly people, right? And then to understand the difference between the oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank, the Israelites and the, starts with a P, the group of people that David was fighting.
Pharisees?
No, it's a ethnicity. The Philistines. Yeah. Sorry. Yes, came back to me. The Philistines. So you got to understand, like there was this war between the Israelites and the Philistines, right? Like, so these are things that, like, if you don't understand that, then the story on itself, it's a good, cute story, but there's a whole lot of layers there, right? So like, I would spend my whole time trying to like understand all that so that, you know, I could talk intelligently. And I think what I've learned is that this Gnostic is more about the experience and less about the book knowledge. And that's really hard for a person like me who has to, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, we did this thing on Mary Magdalene and we talked about what does it mean to see through the eye of the heart. And I got to tell you, that was really hard for me to try to understand that. Like you two picked it up right away, but me, I still struggled with it, right? Like, what is that? I'm trying to find a theoretical answer for what does it mean to see through the eye of the heart. When
That's
really
not a theoretical thing,
it's
though.
about the it's not a theoretical thing, exactly. No, you're right. And so how do you take, someone like who thinks like I do, and you go on this journey and you're kind of like, what is that? It's been challenging. But I will tell you, it's made me question everything that I've known to this point. And so, anyway, history of Gnosis is, what do they believe, right? They believe that we live in a flawed world. It was created by a flawed entity that's not the true God. And when you start thinking about that, like some of this makes sense, right? Like, why is there sin and suffering in the world? Well, it's because it was created that way. The world was created with sin and suffering when the true God, they call it the monad or the pleorma, which is the real heaven, wasn't intended to be like that. And so, I'll give the Reader's Digest version, and stop me when you guys want to jump in, please. But, they believe that there's a source. There's a source of everything, and that all has always been there. The source has always been there. And that source emanated some essence from itself. And it created these, what they call aeons. And there was 12 aeons. And one of them is wisdom. And so when we talked about Mary Magdalene, right, the divine and the feminine energy, the source is both. It's feminine and masculine. I said divine. I meant divine masculine and divine feminine energy. It is both, right? But each one of these aeons had a characteristic of either masculine or feminine. And these aeons were partners. Like they were paired together. So like think of soulmates, right? Well, wisdom. So this actually draws into our whole feminine discussion. Wisdom is feminine in nature. So wisdom, which what they called Sophia, was separated from her soulmate, I guess, and she birthed this being that is what the Gnostics believe is the Old Testament God. And they call it Yaldabaoth. There's many names, but Yaldabaoth is the one they call it. But this entity, this being, did not know his mother, or that there was a higher source, right? So this entity believed that he was the only God. And thus the sayings in there are no gods above me, because he didn't know, right? But what he didn't get was the wisdom from Sophia. And so this Yaldabaoth thinks that he's the only entity, and he starts to create things. And so Sophia, seeing that he was flawed, influenced the creation, especially when it came to humanity. But in the process of her influencing him in the creation of humanity, her divine energy got splintered. And so all of that divine energy fell into the humans. And so we all have this divine energy that exists in us that comes from the Sophia. The Christ, which is Jesus, was sent to do two things: was to rescue Sophia from being trapped in this realm and take her back to the higher realm, to go through the 12, well, as Mary Magdalene says, the 7 powers of the ego, right? And they believe that the planets each planet is an aeon, or is an archon. The demiurge, or the Yaldabaoth, created these archons which influence society, and each planet is a stage of when you're ascending through the ego and you have to escape this realm with your divine spark. Each planet represents one of the archons, and you have to go through each one of those archons to get back to the source, which is where we all ultimately will end up. And life is about learning, awakening to the fact that you are divine, that you have divine energy in you. and that you can command. You are the monad from our consciousness, right? Like well, pointing to my heart, you can't see it, but your consciousness, which exists in your heart, is part of the collective consciousness. So that's kind of in a nutshell what they believe. I mean, it goes way deeper. There's different versions of this, but that's kind of the Reader's Digest version of it.
Yeah, that seems like a lot of extra layers to kind of explain the same thing that we've already been kind of harping on, I guess, a little bit.
Like, what do you mean?
You know, like discovering that we all have divine within us, and we, in a sense, we are God or have God within us, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that you find out, like, and again, this is stuff like, so this is where the book knowledge comes in, right? So we know that the Bible itself is not the exact, it's not the same that was originally written. It has been altered over time. There are passages, and lots of the stories have been recreated in a different way than what they were originally thought to be told. We also know that throughout history, every society has similar stories that come from the Bible. Now, whether those stories were first or the biblical stories were first, I think that's really what the debate is, right? So we know the Greeks had the Egyptians had a flood story that destroyed humanity, same as the Bible, right? Some of the Egyptian gods are mentioned, come from Egyptian lore and Egyptian mythology. Some of them come from the Greek mythology, and I don't say come from, but I mean there's similar stories in Greek mythology. There's similar stories in Egyptian mythology, and some of the other, I'm drawing a blank on some of the other societies, but they all had similar stories that line up with the biblical stories. So then you start to wonder, what was first? Did the biblical writers draw from those stories that because none of this was written down, right? It was all word of mouth at the time. Did they draw from those stories, or did the other societies that have similar stories, did they draw from the biblical narrative, which would have been the Jews, the Israelites at the time? So that's, something that's interesting, right? And then, you fast forward to Jesus, and they don't believe that Jesus actually died on the cross. They believe that it's an allegory to the escape of the material world to the source. So here's another fun, like, things that make you go, huh, right? Like, so I'll bring on, like, I'm going to bring some of our world into this, Grace, but like, I love, like, Wicked, right? Wicked was a really interesting story because, you learn, I grew up watching,
Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz. Yes. Thank you. Drawing a blank. I grew up watching Wizard of Oz, and as a kid, I loved this movie because it was a good feel-good story. But then 50 years later, they come out with this story, and they're going to tell you the Green Witch's side of the story. And you go, now as an adult, I'm watching this, and I was like, okay, she wasn't really evil. She was just misunderstood, right? Like, she wasn't evil. She just was misunderstood. She was actually trying to do the right thing, in their version, right? So you're like, right. These are stories that I love. I love it when they do this, because then you're like, I don't know, did you guys ever watch Cobra Kai?
I've only seen like clips of it. I haven't like fully watched it.
Okay, so you watched Karate Kid, right? Did you ever watch the original Karate Kid?
Yeah.
Okay, so in the movie The Karate Kid, they paint that Daniel is the kid that's just getting bullied, and he's got to defend himself, blah 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 blah, right? Well, then they come out with this series Cobra Kai, and so they pair the two main characters back up, so it's the same actors. It's Ralph Macchio and William, whatever I can't remember his last name, but it's the same two guys from the movie, right? And so in the movie, Ralph Macchio's character was the poor, like he didn't have any money, and and the other guy was rich, right? Well, in the series Cobra Kai, it's flipped. Now Ralph Macchio is this really wealthy guy, and the other dude is now poor, right? And so he's just like, he's like this dude that's just, he can't figure out life and all this stuff. And they equate it back to the fact that he lost this tournament when he was 17 years old. He, dominated, and then he lost this tournament and he didn't know what to do, right? And so his whole life spiraled out of control. But anyway, he's dating this lady, and she has a stepson. And when he decides to start his dojo, he's telling this kid that the story of his life. And by this point, Daniel LaRusso has come back into his life, and he's like really upset about this, right? And so he's telling the kid, and he's like, yeah, he goes, man, he said, don't believe everything that guy tells you. He's like, let me tell you a story. And he's like, one day I was on the beach, and my girlfriend and I were having an argument, and I'm just trying to smooth things over. And this guy shows up, and he wants to start a fight. And they actually take clips from the movie of that scene where they get on the beach. But now he's telling you his side. I was just trying to smooth things over with my girlfriend, and he shows up and he wants to cause all this trouble and cause me to have to fight him. And you're like, huh. That's a whole different take on it, So there's a point of what I was going to say. So now imagine this. In the Gnostic belief, let's take the Garden of Eden story, because I know before we started recording, we actually were talking about this. But what if the serpent actually was trying to do the right thing?
Mm-hmm.
Now,
like in what?
Well, I was going to say, let me set this up, because I know I just I did that on purpose, right? To get you guys to go, huh, what is he talking about? So if you think about the story of the Garden of Eden, God created this utopia, this perfect paradise, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he placed these two humans in the perfect paradise. But in the center of the paradise, he created a tree of life and a tree of knowledge of good and evil. And he told them, you can eat of the tree of life all you want, but you can't touch the tree of knowledge. Now, why would he do that? Why would you put a tree in utopia if you didn't want them to eat from the tree?
Because he knew they were going to eat from the tree.
Did he? So if you take the... Well, hold on a minute. If you think from the Gnostic perspective, the creator of the world is not as intelligent as everybody thinks he is. He's just... He has no emotion and he has no love, right? So we were created and we're more intelligent than we have more sense than the creator, right? And so he says, if you disobey me and you eat from this tree, then you're going to die. And the serpent shows up and says, I want to awaken you. I want to reunite your divine spark. You need to eat from the tree of good and evil, because then you'll be smarter than the person who put you in this prison. Mm-hmm. So what if the snake wasn't really the evil person of the story?
Yeah, I get that.
Oh, look at Michelle. What are you thinking?
I don't know. I'm having a hard time believing that. But
okay. That's fine.
And it just may be because I keep going back to what we're told.
Okay. I get that.
I'm just having a hard time, because why, just knowing humans now, if somebody's going to put something in front of me and say, don't touch this, or like, even so, like if I put an apple in front, or not an apple, but like candy in front of my 7-year-old and I tell him not to touch it, he's going to touch it.
Mm-hmm.
So why wouldn't, I don't know. Just why wouldn't the divine power or God, or however we look at it, why wouldn't he anticipate that?
Good question. Why wouldn't
he? Yeah.
Why would he put it in the garden in the first place?
So they would touch it.
So why not just create us with the knowledge of good and evil?
That's a good question too.
Right.
Mm.
So the Gnostics believed that the serpent was the Christ that ascended through the 12 layers of the archons to rescue humanity from the prison that we were put in. Because if you remember, Sophia is trapped until her energy is regained, and we all have a spark of her energy in us. We are the Sophia. So if the snake was Jesus as a snake and saying, you need to eat of the apple and you're not going to die because you're divine.
So in this logic, Jesus isn't like God, essentially.
Well, Jesus is one of the
Jesus is like 3 in 1.
Jesus is one of the aeons. Well, the Gnostics believe that the Holy Spirit is the Sophia.
Okay.
It's mind blowing, isn't it?
It is mind blowing, and I'm just having a hard time wrapping my brain around this.
Okay.
Yeah, it can be a lot to digest at once.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I will say well, since we started Mary Magdalene, like this is where I've been going. And it all starts to make sense to me, right? But go ahead.
Okay, so in the Bible, you know how with Mary Magdalene, like they say that she has like demons or whatnot. So would these demons be what, like the aeons?
It's the 7 powers of the ego.
Yeah.
Okay, so remember, I don't want to offend certain people, but
I mean,
the church structure, well, I guess we just started in a way that's going to offend everybody. So I guess why do I care, right?
yeah, I mean,
so
we're already on this path.
The Catholic Church, I forgot what pope it was, but he's the one who labeled Mary Magdalene as a prostitute and that she was possessed by 7 demons. The Bible doesn't actually say that.
Okay.
The Bible does not say that she was possessed by 7 demons. That was a story made up by a pope. And it was believed for 1,500 years.
Gregory.
Okay, yeah. Maybe, yeah. And that story was believed for 1,500 years. And recently, in the last 30 years, the Catholic Church has come out and said, yeah, that was made up.
That was made up.
It wasn't true. Like, we don't know if that really was what it was, right?
Right.
What we do know about Mary Magdalene from the Bible is that she did defeat 7 something, but it doesn't say demons. And one would argue that if it does say demons, maybe it does, I don't remember, but if it really was demons, in the Gnostic view, it was the 7 powers of the ego. That Mary Magdalene had achieved ascending through the 7 powers of the ego. And so she was already enlightened. And then some would go to say that she is the Sophia that Jesus came to rescue. Which then leads into the Dan Brown story of that they were the 2 aeons that are partners. But Jesus had permission basically from the source to ascend through the 12 archons to come down into the material world to rescue Sophia. Because without Sophia, then there's an unbalance in the source. So everything's balanced, right? 12 aeons, 6 pairs, right?
Yeah.
And so if Jesus's mate, his pair wasn't there, or if the Christ. So they don't call it Jesus, they call it the Christ. They believe the Christ is a thing, but not in the savior sense, that he didn't come to die for us. He didn't come to die for our sins. And that sins are something that we create. And sin is just being ignorant of the fact that you're divine. That's the sin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, I got the wheels in her head turning. She is so like
I mean, that's talked about a little bit in the yeah, it's talked about a little bit in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, in that like Jesus says in that gospel that sin is not real. I know those aren't the exact words, but he's saying something to that extent, and that it's only sinful because of how humans act or something like that.
Ignorance.
Yeah, it's interesting that this is all right, but it's interesting that it's all, we're talking about all this when Easter's in a couple days. You know?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Trust me, I thought about that too. I was like, oh, we're starting this just before Easter, right? So.
And with all the Magdalene stuff, it's believed, or it can be believed, that like Mary Magdalene kind of in a way died, not actually died with Jesus, but she was there with him when he died, and like kind of in a sense, like I feel like there's some like underworld aspect to it as well, that she like descended with him in order for him to ascend and resurrect, kind of thing. And so that kind of ties in with what you were saying of like the pairs and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's so wild to me that majority of people who, you know, that don't necessarily like the Magdalene Jesus pairing of like, oh, they could have been married, they could have had a kid, like they just really don't like that for some reason. And it's like, why is it so scandalous for them to have been actually in love? Because isn't like being able to like physically act on it, isn't that like also of the like such a pure form of love as well? It's like,
right,
and that's just one aspect of it. Like there's such a true pairing that Jesus shared everything with her, and she knows more than any of the other disciples about anything that he went through, and was trying to teach the people.
So I think, to answer your question, I think it goes back to like what we were talking before we started recording, which is we have been programmed for 1,500 years because the Bible was decided by a group of people, and for almost 1,000 years, the only thing that people knew, well, you also got to remember, what was put in the Bible was decided by a group of men, and I need to say that, and the general populace didn't even know what was in the Bible for several hundred years, until Martin Luther demanded that the Bible be made available to everybody.
And I mean, I think most of society didn't even know how to read either.
Probably not.
You know? Yeah.
So, I mean, you think about that, right? So, like, if you think about the church, Catholicism, Christianity, I mean, let's be real. Roman Catholicism was the first organized form of Christianity, because after in Jesus's time, let's just say for a minute that the resurrection, let's take the Gnostic stuff aside for a second. The resurrection, Jesus came to save us, to be our savior. And, what happened after the resurrection? Well, in the biblical story, he was here for 40 days. He stayed with the disciples for 40 days and he taught them more things. They don't really go into the New Testament. What were those new things that he taught them? But some believe that this is where he clearly explained the idea of the parables. And, like when he was in human form, he talked in parables and he talked in riddles, and, a lot of it was confusing, right? And so the idea is that 40 days that he stayed with the disciples was that when he told them, he made things clear to them. He was able to open their minds so that they could understand. And then this is what led to the formulation of the church. But even then, for the first probably 300 years, there was no organization to Christianity. It wasn't until Constantine decided to put some sort of structure to it, and thus began the birth of the Roman Catholic Church. Because Constantine was a Roman ruler, right? And so that's at the same time that they decreed what is now the Vatican is going to be its own sovereign nation. The Pope will be the president or the ruler of the Vatican. Like, this is where the church structure started happening. The Nicene Creed was shortly thereafter, where they decided what was going to be in the Bible. Like, all of this structure of society was decided during that time frame. This is also when they decided what was going to be in the Bible and what wasn't going to be in the Bible. So all of these stories that are Gnostic in nature, they existed. People believed this. There were groups of people that believed this, what we're just talking about. But when they did the Nicene Creed, when they established the church, when those people started getting prosecuted because it went against what they believed was the structure of the church. And in their belief, Jesus was divine. Jesus was God, and God does not mate with humans.
So now it leads to the question, are we living, or are we like leading out our faith or living out our faith? Or are we just repeating what is handed to us or fed to us? Or
very good question. Like, think about this. I mean, we started this and you got very uncomfortable really quickly. Because it goes against everything that you've been told. And I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying it goes against everything that you've been told. And all I'm saying is go back to the wicked story. Yeah. What if we find out that the wicked witch really wasn't wicked, that she was just trying to do the right thing?
Right thing, yeah. Very true.
And it's like, another way of looking at it. The Roman Empire, the Roman Empire, which then created the Roman Catholic Church, almost seems like the wolf in sheep's clothing, because they're the ones that killed Jesus for sharing such outrageous ideas and beliefs that went against the empire itself. So they killed him for it, but then they stole it from him and created their own religion off of it.
Right.
And used him as like a symbol.
Agreed.
So, yeah.
But, I mean, I do love it because it's going back to why we started this podcast in the first place. Where, we dropped the performances and we're just, what is the truth?
What is the truth? Right. What is the truth? Yeah. I mean, I think you just said something, Grace, that had a thought. Now I can't remember what it was. Oh my gosh, this is what happens when you get old. Oh, so I was going to say, it seems to me, and again, this is just my perception, and I think one of the reasons why I stopped going to church was you look at how most churches, not even non-Catholic churches, they're all set up in the same way. There's a hierarchy to the church. And, for you to be a pastor, you have to have special education. But that's not how it was after Jesus. When Jesus walked the earth, or right after he died and went and resurrected, they didn't have a structure like that. There weren't people that were scholars leading churches. These were just everyday people like you and me, and sitting in a group, and they're talking about life. And now, the Catholicism starts, and there's a structure to it. And now you have to have credentials. Now you have to have these things in order to be a leader of the church. And it was very anti-women. Which we know, from the Old Testament, that there were women in leadership positions. So where did that come from? Like these, when we started the whole thing, like there's a lot of things that just, that kind of went to the wayside because this structure and this order, they call it order. We put order to chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but how much of this got lost, right? So like you take the Gnostic gospels that are out there, right? So like, it is always interesting to me. Like, here's the other thing that used to bother me when I would go to church was like, the pastors would be up there giving their sermon and they would be citing source material that wasn't in the Bible. And you're like, well, where did that come from? How did you know that? And they're like, oh, well, I'm a pastor. I have access to all these things. Well, why can't I have access to all those things? Right. Why can't I know that there's a whole set of Gnostic gospels out there that tell a slightly different story?
Mm-hmm.
It tells a different way of thinking. So it goes back to this, like, again, I might say something controversial, but this is the control part, right? Like it's no different than how the church started. We're not going to tell the masses the truth. We're not going to give them everything because then it creates chaos in their minds, right? I mean, I'm not saying that it's wrong, or I'm not saying that they're evil. Please don't think that I'm saying they're evil, right? I'm just saying... but you understand what I'm saying, right? I'm not saying that I'm not trying to advocate that we should all just throw away the church. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that there was a reason behind the structure, but you have to start questioning, well, why do I not have access to that information? Why am I, as good and evil as the internet has been in our lives, one thing it does do is it gives us access to information that we never had access to before. So more and more people are starting to do this. So we go back to, why is the younger generation, why is Grace's generation so anti-organized religion? Because you have access to information that we didn't have access to.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And it paints a different picture. And so that's where I go back to.
And there's so many,
I mean, am I wrong?
No, I don't. Not one bit.
Well, I'm asking the younger member of our team. The Gen Z. I mean,
right. I was just going to say, like, there's a lot of reasons why younger people don't necessarily like religion. There's certain, beliefs and statements that are said by certain groups of Christians about Christianity or religion in general, and my younger people are able to look at it from a more objective perspective and be like, okay, but evolution exists. Or like, it's interesting to hear from Christians, and they don't necessarily always understand who Jesus really was and how rebellious he was just in his own way of being, in sharing these what they considered to be outrageous thoughts at the time of like, as long as you believe, it'll happen, or like, you have the power within you to do anything that you want. And something that like that seems so outrageous. And he was always hanging out with the lepers and the what people consider to be the sinners of the time. And it's like, and then Christians look down upon the exact people that Jesus would have been loved to hang out with. Yeah. As it evolves through time now, because so
here's another thought-provoking thing, and this is something I've struggled with for a long time, is, okay, so you bring up it's Easter, it's going to be Easter weekend. So here's some issues that I have. The non-Orthodox Easter, which is the Roman Catholic and the Protestants, celebrate a different day than the Orthodox do. The Orthodox Easter is 2 weeks later this year. Sometimes, like every 5 years, they line up at the same time, but most of the time they're not. They're like 2 weeks apart from each other. So then you got to wonder, why is that? Do the Orthodox see it as a different day, right? Because the Romans lined up with their Gregorian calendar and the Orthodox didn't. But here's the other really thought-provoking thing that I was going to say, and this is the one thing I've struggled with my whole life. Like, ever since I become a Christian is let's talk about Judas. We villainize Judas relentlessly because he's the one who turned Jesus into the Romans. But if the resurrection story is true and Jesus had to die on a cross to save us from our sins, somebody had to do it.
Right.
And if it wasn't Judas, then who?
Right.
So we villainize this guy because he gave up the Savior. But then on the same hand, we say the only way that this happened, the only way that we're saved is Jesus dies for our sin. So why are we villainizing this guy who did probably what he was told to do? Yeah. What if Jesus told him he's the one that's going to betray me? And Judas just played his part. He just did what the Savior told him to do. What if that's what really happened? Does that put a different perspective on Judas? Does that take him out of the evil column and put him into the good guy column?
I honestly
ahead. Sorry,
this
Grace.
is something I feel like. No, you're good. Ever since I was in a production of Jesus Christ Superstar, almost 3 years ago, it really does feel like we all have a part to play in life and in society in general, and that really, just learning more about Judas and what he did really felt like that at the time. And with how the person who played it at the time, she was so, because I was in like a gender bent, basically it was like an all LGBT and like women led production of Jesus Christ Superstar, so that was really cool. So Judas was played by a woman, and I don't know, she just really like humanized it in a way of like, Judas felt obligated to do so, but he still felt like conflicted about it, and he's like, he couldn't believe that he had to do it, but it did seem necessary in order for everything else to unfold. Yeah, so it's definitely an interesting process of life, I think.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I mean, just things to think about. So
it always makes me wonder what because I feel like in the last few months or so I keep thinking about like, what exactly is my role to play in society or in life, you know? And I try not to like stress myself out about that too much, because I feel like I'm starting to learn that the whole point is to just be as authentic as possible and show up in the world completely authentic kind of thing. But then I might start overthinking about what exactly that is for me and that kind of thing. But yeah, because I'm someone who loves labels and lists and things like that from most of the time. But as I've grown older, as a young adult, it's like I've been trying to like peel back the specific labels. Like, we don't necessarily have to have any specific labels, and so that's definitely been an interesting learning process as well.
Isn't it kind of freeing?
Yes, but also I think my brain is so used to that form of control in some way, so I'm trying to figure out how to live without that, because it is like breaking free from certain strains of control, but then it's like, what do I do? What like, I need something to keep me structured in some way, I think.
You write your own path.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, that's what you do, right? Like, when you free yourself from the constraints of life that have been holding you back, what do? Anything you want at that point.
Yeah.
It's freeing.
It always seems easier said than done somehow. I don't know why.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Especially, I mean, like, okay, so like exactly what you're saying, right? Like this, who knew that, when we started this, I thought, oh, we're just going to do kind of like this Bible study. That's what our thing will be. And we'll interview people and we'll hear their lives and we'll all be celebrating. But then, we started Mary Magdalene and it totally changed the trajectory of the way I think of life. And it's just like, trust me, I've struggled for a month, but then it starts to make sense. And you're going, okay, maybe there's something here. Maybe this is what really is. And again, I'm not fully there yet, but it does start to question things. where you go,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about Easter.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't Judas, then who was it going to be? Because it had to be somebody. So then why are we
Right.
villainizing this guy? Because somebody had to do it. Jesus foretold of this before we even knew that somebody was going to betray him. He said he had to die. In the Bible, he said he had to die multiple times. He told us the path. There are prophecies from the Old Testament that said this was going to happen.
Let's say there's, since Genesis, it said.
Correct. So why do we villainize this guy? Why do we villainize Judas for probably doing the role that he was intended to do?
Yeah.
And how do we know not? Jesus didn't tell him, you're going to be the one. You have the most important job, which is to betray me.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's going to be hard on you, but you have to do it. And I will forgive you. Like, how do we know that that didn't happen? We don't.
Right.
Because it's not in the Bible. And it says that, they paint this story that he was so distraught that he went and hung himself.
Right.
But in the Gnostic gospel of Judas, he says that story. Jesus picked him out. Jesus told him, this is your role. Again, a piece of information that we all didn't have access to until they found these things in 1945. It just opens up a different avenue, right? What if Judas really wasn't the villain?
Well, yeah, the real
Start to
villain was
question everything.
just the Roman Empire in general.
Well, in some aspects, yeah, absolutely. Especially during that time. I mean, they were very unstructured. They didn't believe in Christianity at that point. They still believed in their, here's another thing that I've learned is, as I've been heading down this path, is, there's a lot of validity to Zen, Buddhism, Hinduism, right? Like in Buddhism, they do a lot of meditating, and it's about higher consciousness and self-awareness. And who was another proponent of Gnosticism was Carl Jung, one of the probably most famous philosophers and psychologists out there. And he talked about this, right? Like he talked about your inner psyche and, awakening your consciousness, right? Like this collective, that we're all part of the collective conscious, right? And so it's just a different, to me, it's again, the what if, right? Like I've spent my whole life thinking that this guy was a villain, but what if he wasn't? What if he was just doing what Jesus had asked him to do? And if you read the Bible, you wouldn't know that. But if you go outside of the Bible and you go to these other sources and you say, oh, here's Judas telling his story. And his story is not what they've been telling us for 1,500 years. His story is that Jesus told him he had to do this.
Mm-hmm.
It's just different.
Yeah. It's funny that, like, I guess I honestly forgot that it is not technically in the Bible, that it's portrayed that way, because I've just already been seeing it as that way for a while now. I just forgot that that's how it was written at first, I guess.
Yeah.
You've been seeing it as if Judas was just playing his part?
Yeah.
Oh. And see, that's what I was saying earlier. I think your generation is the generation that moves the needle. I've said that for a while. Like your generation is the generation that moves the needle. There's a study that's done about generations and how each generation slowly adapts to something new, right? Until they say it's every fourth generation. Every fourth generation, there's a radical shift in thinking. And if you look at the generational screen, your generation is the generation that's going to cause the radical shift in thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it today. You guys are bringing more awareness to the LGBTQ community. You guys are bringing more awareness to the not accepting the norm and not, like, why do we villainize these people? Like these are, this is what I see, right? Like your generation is starting, I call it the Great Awakening. I think your generation has started the Great Awakening, questioning the traditional ways of thinking and saying, well, what if? The what if?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely see that. And as we were talking about the whole Judas thing, I, I, it made me think about our current state of the world and our country, and everything going on with our government. Because as much as I hate our president, I do feel like it just seemed like a final straw kind of thing for everything to collapse and like end in order for us, and maybe my generation, but us in general, to build something new and
It's quite
better,
possible.
healthier. Because it's like the fact that everything is like coming to light, it just feels like it's ending. At least I hope for that very much. So it's just a very grueling, uncomfortable process, having to live through it and kind of wait for that.
So what if his role was to expose all of the corruption and then the various things that happen behind the scenes that we're not all aware of, right? Like I
Right.
think the last 10 years has been an awakening moment for people in the world to realize there is an evil that exists that we all just ignored.
Right.
And now we're being aware of it, right? And you know, you can say the guy's an evil narcissist, which is probably somewhat true, right? But you got to say, like, he's exposing the world to things that people didn't know.
Right.
And maybe that's his job. Maybe that's what he's doing at this point in time. Love him or hate him, but there has been some good that came out of it, right? I mean, there's exposure to things that we didn't even know. And we're all starting to go, wait a minute. Our government does this. Our government is spending money on this kind of stuff. Our government is telling us these things and this wasn't true. And your generation is the one that's going to be like, enough's enough. We're done.
Right. Yeah, I'm waiting on the justice part.
I think it'll come. It may be 30 years down the road, but I think your generation is the generation that's going to change everything for the better.
Right. Yeah. I can be an impatient person, but
of course. I mean, we all can, right? We want instant gratification, but sometimes these things take time. I mean, you've got to hit rock bottom before you can start climbing out of the hole.
Oh, for sure.
And I don't think we're at the bottom yet. I think we're close, but I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I go back to like the things that we've been exposed to in the last 10 years. Like I joke about the conspiracy theories, but like these are all theories that I had before and now they're starting to come to light. And you're like, holy crap. Like I thought this was all Hollywood stuff, but no, like there's an evil corruption that exists in our government. And like, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe. Now you wonder, why do these people want to stay in power for 40, 50 years? Well, because this is what they do.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And this is how they build their power. And now the world is starting to see it.
Yeah.
And you guys, your generation has the power to make a change for the better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you probably do that one election at a time or one day at a time. You guys say, yeah, we're done. We're fed up. We're tired of living in our parents' house. We're tired of not having jobs. We're tired of being lied to. We're tired of all these things, right? Like that's what it's going to take.
Yeah.
And I think you guys are on the right path. Keep going. Charge forward.
Yeah.
I won't ever see it. I guarantee you I won't see the end state. I'll probably be dead before it gets there.
Oh, I mean, I'd like to think that it'll only take like 15 to 20 years. You know?
Well, of course we'd like it to happen tomorrow, but Rome wasn't built in a day. I mean, you got to think about there's so many systems in place that have been so entrenched in the world, right?
Oh, yeah.
The way there's a bunch of cogs in the wheel and you got to start breaking the cogs and you can't break them all at once. You got to start, you got to break them off one at a time and kind of make the wheel smooth or build new cogs or new ways of thinking.
Right.
And that takes time. It takes time.
Yeah.
But the good news is people are waking up. People are starting to see. And that's a good thing.
Right.
And then why are we questioning, I grew up with this modality of thinking. And now I'm starting to question everything. And it is kind of freeing, actually. It's kind of freeing to say, you know what, I'm not going to listen to that anymore. I'm going to do my own thing.
Right.
And if believing that Gnosticism is really the path and that there's this, you know, we live in a flawed world and blah, 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 then that's my thing.
You do you, Ron.
Yeah. I mean, it's exactly, right?
Yeah.
I will tell you one of the things that, you know, like goes back to the beginning of what we were saying, and we're going to have to wrap up here because we're.
I was going to say.
But, you know, the whole idea of Gnosticism and the whole idea of life is about experience and not about what you know. It's about experience, and you experience by being with people. You experience by, I don't want to say live, but you experience by their pain, and you experience by their suffering, and you experience by what they're going through, and you don't brush it off as nonsense. You know, the only way we advance humanity is to start caring about one another and not caring that we might think differently on certain things. But at the end of the day, we're all here for one another. And that's what the love is about. That's what love is. That's that unconditional love that says, hey, we can be different, but I can love you and I can be there for you and I can support you. And I'm not going to judge you. I think that's where we need to get. And I think that's what your generation is teaching us.
Right. It's a mix of that and like just standing up for yourself in general and like
absolutely
not taking any shit kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. So all right. Well, we're going to have to wrap it up because we are over time. And just a few, we do have a guest. Next episode will be a guest, Mr. David Shapiro, and we'll do some more introduction when he comes on. But I also want to tell our listeners that we did start a Substack. We are going to each start posting articles and notes on Substack about things that we're thinking about. And I think we agreed that we will all write an article and a self-reflection of this episode, right? Did we?
Yeah.
We did kind of agree to that, right? Didn't we?
Yeah. We are now.
Yeah, well, I guess we are now. I just told you we're going to do it. So.
I was going to say, I always find it interesting when I'm like editing the episode and I'm like re-listening to it because obviously I'm in it when we're recording, but then I re-listen to it and there's like more things that come to mind and I was like, I wish I had said something. So I'm sure that's going to happen. I feel like that literally happens every single episode in some way. So yeah.
Well, now writing your article on Substack will give you the opportunity to be like, hey, this is what I thought of afterward. Because I do the same thing. When I go back and re-listen to them after you publish them, I was like, oh, well, that could have went in a different direction. Or we could have talked about, you know, so yeah, I get you. So.
Right. And it's almost like, I don't know if it's a thing of like time moves so fast or we change so much as people where it's like even after just a few days, you can look back on something and you already feel slightly different as a person. At least that's how I feel when I'm like watching it. Whereas like I already have like a slightly new and different perspective on what we were talking about. Yeah.
Maybe it's because we're in the presence of great company and we all learn from one another.
Maybe.
That's what I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Go ahead, Michelle. Close us out.
All right. Make sure you check us out on Substack. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, all of the things. So come join us in the conversation. And if you want to join us in a conversation, you can send us a message. Our email is nakedfaithpodcast@gmail.com.
All right.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.